yesterday we talked about Little House on the Prairie and we watched the video. We watched a couple videos about life on the Oregon Trail. And we learned that that wasn't pleasant, right?
Yes.
We learned that we couldn't stop at McDonald's or the gas station to use the restroom or to get a snack or anything that we have modern conveniences like we have today, right?
Yeah.
We had to hunt for our food. We had to
Look for it.
we had to look for food. We had to use the bathroom outside. Nothing about their lives was fun.
We had.
Okay. Don't interrupt. Then we read chapter 1 of Little House on the Prairie, and we learned that they had decided to leave their home. They had a regular home, and they decided to pack up their wagon with Ma and Pa and their 3 little girls and decided to move west. We're not really sure where west they're going right now, but they're moving west. Okay? And they kind of just packed up all their stuff and just took off. Why were they moving?
Because they had.
Hang on, one at a time. Raise your hand. Caitlin, why were they moving?
Because their places were destroyed, maybe.
No, not destroyed, Mason.
They wanted to go to a new place for land.
They wanted to go to a new place for land, but what did they say the reason was, Jack?
Because did people like open Darcy's people?
Yeah, they were getting too crowded. And by crowded, put your hands down, they had seen more neighbors than they wanted to. They had heard other people around. They heard somebody else using their axe. Now, I don't know about you, but I hear my neighbors outside all the time, like cutting their grass when I wake up in the morning. And that doesn't cause me to want to move. Sometimes it does when they're cutting their grass really early in the morning. I want to move away, but it doesn't make me want to move. So we're used to our neighbors being around, but at this time, that was like scary to them because they lived in like really, really wide open places. And to Pa, that kind of freaked him out a little bit. That was too close for comfort for him. If he could hear somebody that close to him, he was scared. Okay? He's like, no, we're not doing that. We're moving somewhere farther away.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to talk, don't raise your hand yet. We're going to talk about a couple vocabulary things today. One is called ford the river. Now, they were in a wagon, right? We looked at what those wagons looked like. Fording the river means they take off the wheels of the wagon and they make their wagon a boat. Is a wagon ever supposed to be a boat?
No. You have to do wooden stuff.
No. Why not?
Because it'll sink.
Because it's not made to be a boat, right? It's not supposed to be built like that. It's not a boat shape. And it's heavy. It's filled with junk.
It doesn't have air.
So put it on. I don't want to see your shoulders. Okay, it's not built for that. So when they say they're going to ford the river, basically what they mean is there's no bridges, and they're going to take the wheels off their wagon, and they're going to try to make their wagon a boat and float across the river to get safely across. Don't ask me questions right now. I know, but it's okay. So a lot of times, we talked about the causes of death, and we talked about drowning yesterday, right?
Yeah.
Drowning was one of them. Okay? So a lot of times what would happen is they would try to cross this river, and the wagon would tip over because it was top heavy, and people would get stuck under it or get sucked under it with the current, and they would drown. Or stuff would fall out, or the oxen would get sucked under the current, or they just couldn't reach the bottom and they couldn't pull the wagon anymore. So the wagon would kind of float off and they'd lose control of it, and that was it. They'd lose everything. Okay? So it just wasn't smart, this fording the river. Just so many things could go wrong. Okay? So we're going to talk about fording the river and how that worked. What, Legend?
when we were on it,
We're on what?
saw one of those. They had the wheels on, but there was this little platform and a rope and
Yeah.
a wheel up there that they had to ride on it and ride across.
That happens if it's not shallow enough, or if it's shallow enough, they could do that. But what happens when it's a really big river and they're trying to do that?
No, like there was these ropes. When there was this rope.
I get what you're saying, but what happens when it's deep and they can't do that?
Oh, could you
They
see?
could still do it.
Could you see?
They just have to.
How are they going to navigate the river? Who's going to pull it?
Them.
Who's going to walk in the river if they can't touch?
They could use.
We're going to go on to chapter 2. Okay, we're going to go to chapter 2. Put your hands down. So, chapter 2 is crossing the creek. Now, is a creek as deep as a river?
No.
No, it's not. Okay. Pet and Patty, who are they again?
The kids.
The kids.
Pet and Patty, does that sound like pet?
Dad and mom.
No,
Legend.
the horse.
Legend. Pet and Patty are the horses.
It's ponies.
Shh. Pet and Patty began to trot briskly as if they were glad to. Laura held tightly to the wagon bow and stood up into the jolting wagon. Beyond Pa's shoulders and far across the waves of green grass, she could see the trees, and they were not like any trees she had seen before. They were no taller than bushes. "Whoa," said Pa suddenly. "Now which way?" he muttered to himself. The road divided here, and you could not tell which was the more traveled way. Both of them were faint wheel tracks in the grass. One went towards the west, and the other one sloped downwards a little towards the south. Both soon vanished in the tall, blowing grass. "Better go downhill, I guess," Pa decided. The creek's down in the bottoms. Must be this way in the way towards the ford. He turned Pet and Patty towards the south. The road went down and up and down and up again, over gently curved land. The trees were nearer now, but they were no taller. Then Laura gasped and clutched the wagon bow, for almost under Pet and Patty's noses there were no more blowing grasses. There was no land at all. She looked beyond the edge of the land and across the tops of the trees. The road turned there. For a little way, it went along the cliff's tops. Then it went sharply downward. Pa put on the brakes. Pet and Patty braced themselves backwards and almost sat down. The wagon wheels slid onward, little by little, lowering the wagon further down the steep slope into the ground. Jagged cliffs on bare, red earth rose up on both sides of the wagon. Grass waved along their tops, but nothing grew on their seamed, straight up and down slides. There were hot and heat came from them against Laura's face. The wind still blowing overhead, but it did not blow down into this deep crack into the ground. The stillness seemed strange and empty. Then, once more, the wagon was level. The narrow crack down which it had come opened into the bottom lands. Here grew the tall trees whose tops Laura had seen from the prairie above. Shady groves of trees were scattered along the growing meadows, and in the groves, deer were lying down, hardly to be seen among the shadows. The deer turned their heads towards the wagon, and curious fawns stood up to see it more clearly. Laura was surprised because she did not see the creek, but the bottom lands were wide. Down here, below the prairie, there were gentle hills and open, sunny places. The air was still hot. Under the wagon wheels was soft grass. The ground was soft. In the sunny open spaces, the grass grew thin. The deer had cropped it short. For a while, the high, bare cliffs of red earth stood up against the wagon, but they were almost hidden behind hills and trees. When Pet and Patty stopped to drink from the creek, the rushing sound of the water filled the still air. All along the creek banks, the trees hung over it and made it dark with the shadows. In the middle, it ran swiftly, sparkling blue and silver. "This creek's pretty high," Pa said, "but I guess we can make it all right. You can see this in the ford, by the old wheel ruts. What do you say, Caroline?" "Whatever you say, Charles," Ma answered. Pet and Patty lifted their wet noses. They pricked their ears forward, looking at the creek. Then they pricked them backwards to hear what Pa would say. They sighed and laid their soft noses together to whisper to each other. A little way upstream, Jack was lapping the water with his red tongue. "I'll tie down the wagon cover," Pa said. He climbed down from his seat, unrolled the canvas sides, and tied them firmly to the wagon box. Then he pulled the rope at the back so that the canvas puckered together in the middle, leaving only a tiny round hole, too small to see through. Mary hurled down on the bed. She did not like fords. She was afraid of the rushing water, but Laura was excited. She liked the splashing. Pa climbed to the seat, saying, "They may have to swim out there in the middle, but we'll make it all right, Caroline." Laura thought of Jack and said, "I wish Jack could ride in the wagon, Pa." Jack is the dog. Pa did not answer. He gathered the reins tightly in his hand. Ma said, "Jack can swim, Laura. He'll be all right." The wagon went forward softly in the mud. Water began to splash against the wheels. The splashing grew louder. The wagon shook as the noisy water struck at it. Then, all at once, the wagon lifted and balanced and swayed. It was a lovely feeling. The noise stopped, and Ma said sharply, "Lie down, girls." Quick as a flash, Mary and Laura dropped flat on the bed. When Ma spoke like that, they did as they were told. Ma's arm pulled a smothering blanket over them, heads and all. "Be still, just as you are, and don't move," she said. Laura did not move. She was trembling and still. But Laura could not help wriggling a little bit. She did not want to see what was happening. She could feel the wagon swaying and turning. The splashing was noisy again, and again it died away. Then Pa's voice frightened Laura. It said, "Take them, Caroline." The wagon lurched. There was a sudden heavy splash beside it. Laura sat up straight and clawed the blanket from her head. Pa was gone. Ma sat alone, holding tight to the reins with both hands. Mary hid her face in the blanket again, but Laura rose up further. She couldn't see the creek bank. She couldn't see anything in front of the wagon but water rushing at it. And in the water, 3 heads, Pet's head and Patty's head and Pa's small wet head. Pa's fist in the water was holding tight to Pet's bridle. Laura could faintly hear Pa's voice through the rushing of the water. It sounded calm and cheerful, but she couldn't hear what it said. He was talking to the horses. Ma's face was white and scared. "Lie down, Laura," Mom said. Laura lay down. She felt cold and sick. Her eyes were shut tight, but she could still see the water, terrible, and Pa's brown beard drowning in it. For a long, long time, the wagon swayed and swung, and Mary cried without making a sound, and Laura's stomach felt sicker and sicker. Then the front wheels struck and grated, and Pa shouted. The whole wagon jerked and jolted and tipped backwards, but the wheels were turning on the ground. Laura was up again, holding to the seat, and she saw Pet and Patty scrambling, wetbacks climbing a steep bank, and Pa running beside them, shouting, "Hi, Pet, hi, Patty, get up, whoopsie-daisy, good girls." At the top of the bank, they stood up still, panting and dripping, and the wagon stood still, safely out of the creek. Pa stood panting and dripping too, and Ma said, "Oh, Charles." There, Caroline," said Pa. "We're all safe, thanks to the good, tight wagon box, well fastened to the running gear. I never saw a crate rise so fast in my life. Pet and Patty are good swimmers, but I guess they wouldn't have made it if I hadn't helped them. If Pa had not known what to do, or if Ma had not been too frightened to drive, or if Laura and Mary had been naughty or bothered her, then they all would have been lost. The river would have rolled them over and over and carried them away, and they would have all drowned, and nobody would have ever known what had become of them. For weeks, perhaps, no other person would have came along that road. Well, said Pa, all's well that ends well. And Ma said, Charles, you're wet to the skin. Before Pa could answer, Laura cried, Where's Jack? They had forgotten Jack. They had left him on the other side of that dreadful water, and now they could not see him anywhere. He must have tried to swim after them, but now they could not see him struggling in the water now. Laura swallowed hard to keep from crying. She knew it was shameful to cry, but there was crying inside of her. All the way from Wisconsin, poor Jack had followed them so patiently and faithfully, and now they had left him to drown. He was so tired, they might have taken him into the wagon. He had stood on the bank and seen the wagon going away from him, as if they didn't care for him at all, and he would never know how much they wanted him. Pa said he wouldn't have done such a thing to Jack, not for $1 million. If he'd known that creek would rise when they were in the middle of the stream, they would have never let Jack try to swim it. But that can't be helped now, he said. He went far up and down the creek bank, looking for Jack, calling for him and whistling for him. But it was no use. Jack was gone. Boys and girls, sit up. Jack, sit up. At last there was nothing to do but go on. Pet and Patty were rested. Pa's clothes had dried on him while they searched for Jack. He took the reins again and drove uphill, out of the river bottoms. Laura looked back all the way. She knew she wouldn't see Jack again, but she wanted to. She didn't see anything but low curves on land coming between the wagon and the creek, and beyond the creek those strange cliffs of red earth rose up again. The other bluffs, just like them, stood up in front of the wagon. Faint wheel tracks went into a crack between the earthen walls. Pet and Patty climbed till those cracks became a small grassy valley, and the valley widened out into the high prairie once more. No road, not even the faintest trace of wheels or of a rider's passing, could be seen anywhere. That prairie looked as if no human eyes had ever seen it before. Only the tall, wide grass covered the endless empty land of a great empty sky arched over it. Far away, the sun's edge touched the rim of the earth. The sun was enormous, and it was throbbing and pulsing with light. All around the sky's edge ran a pale pink glow, and above the pink glow was yellow, and above that was blue. Above the blue, the sky was no color at all. Purple shadows were gathering over the land, and the wind was mourning.
Jack, stay away.
Stop talking. Pa stopped the Mustangs. He and Ma got out of the wagon to make camp, and Mary and Laura climbed down to the ground too. Oh, Ma, Laura begged. Jack has gone to heaven, hasn't he? He was such a good dog. Can't he go to heaven? Ma didn't know what to answer, but Pa said, Yes, Laura, he can. God that doesn't forget the sparrows won't leave a good dog like Jack out in the cold. Laura felt only a little better. She was not happy. Pa did not whistle about his work like usual, and after a while he said, What will he do in a wild country without a good watchdog? I do not know. Okay, so they forded the river and they made it, or the creek, I guess you could say. But what did they leave behind?
Jack.
Bryden?
Yeah.
Stop. Who took the reins?
Pop.
No.
The dad.
No.
The dog?
Who took the reins when Pa had to go help the horses?
Oh, Mom.
Ma. Why did he have to help the horses?
Because because they
The
were
water was
being
rising
brought
really
to
fast, and the horses were about to drown, and Pa had to help the horses.
And they were important because they couldn't he couldn't get the wagon moving without them.
The wagon was kind of getting stuck in the mud of the river, of the creek. So if they didn't keep moving, the wagon would have gotten stuck for sure. That is true.
Did Jack die? No.
I can't tell you that.